Well, good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a super Friday evening. Who have we got in the chat this evening? We've got Pilsnerish. Hey, good to see you again. Ross Lowe, thanks very much for joining. Oh, you can't listen in. Oh, no worries. And Amy in Orbit, hope you're having a great evening up there. Black Bocas, good to see you again. Captain Crash, good work on the Hindenburg so far. Looking forward to seeing some more progress updates on it. And YPOC92, awesome, good to see you as well. Thanks for joining the stream again. First and foremost, I'm running on a new headset this evening, so if somebody out there can give me a check on the audio, it'd be very much appreciated. I've been spending most of the afternoon fiddling with settings in OBS to try and get it back to where I was. The microphone's a bit oversensitive in some cases, but I think it's roughly where it needs to be, so hopefully it's working out for you. Winston, good to see you, and yeah, thanks very much, Captain Crash, much appreciated. Evening, Miles. Miles Mace 1, thanks very much for joining. 5x5, thanks, Amy. So what we're going to do is fly this 737-200 from Gatwick up to Stavanger in Norway. It's one of the routes that Danair used to operate in the 80s and 90s when the North Sea oil was in its boom phase, if you like, the 70s, 80s, ferrying lots of oil rig workers back and forth between Norway and the UK. We'll take a slightly odd route today though. Let's have a look at the route, see if this works here. So this is SkyVector, obviously. We are looking at the VFR map at the moment. And obviously Gatwick's down here and Norway's up here. Now in the 1970s and the 1980s, the whole of the east coast of the UK was largely military airspace. The main spine of the country in the middle was where the commercial air traffic was. You can see the airspace here, but on the east coast that was largely military. So the North Sea, there's lots of exercise areas out there. If we put it onto the airways map, the high airways map, you can see that as well, that there's a number of airways crossing. That's for European traffic coming across over towards Ireland for the Atlantic. But there's not so much as far as southwestern or south coast UK up towards Norway. These days we would kind of go across this way and then straight up, but we're going to do it with VOR navigation today, so we're going to take a slightly different route. Hey Totorico, good to see you. So it's 500 miles in a straight line, 1 hour 23 minutes. Rather than using Navigraph, we're just going to rubber band a route together in SkyVector and take it from there. I know to get out of Gatwick I can fly the Lamborn departure. So if I just drop the route onto Lamborn, we get Lamborn 5 Papa, we'll work something out. And from Lamborn, it's really straightforward. I'm going to go to Brookman's Park, then I'm going to go to Pole Hill, Tala, TLA. I'm going to go to Perth, and we can wave to Amy from there. We'll go up to Aberdeen and then across to Stavanger Sola Airfield. So if I plop that in there, you can see that the route is a little bit circuitous. There's no denying the fact it's a bit longer, another 20 minutes or so. All VOR, Black Bocas, no SIVA, no FMC today, just the VOR radios. So it's a little bit longer, but it's not unrealistically long, because when these aircraft are operating, they've got limited navigation aids. If they don't have something that can do long-range autonomous navigation, then this is the sort of route you'd have. You could maybe ask why we're not going across from Newcastle here. There's what looks to be a VOR in Newcastle, but this is just a DME. There's no radial information off it, so it'd be difficult to navigate outbound. So basically, that's the route. As if we're flying up to Aberdeen, turning right, and then on towards Stavanger. One of the interesting things is we need to get the radials as well. Now, I've already done that, so we don't have to waste time on the stream doing it. But as well as the outbound radial, let's look at this. If I put it into VFR, just to declutter a little bit. In fact, let's go up to Aberdeen, because it's more obvious here. Outbound from Aberdeen is 068 degrees, but you can see that, it's a great circle track. Hey, Yearning9, good to see you. So 068 degrees outbound from Aberdeen doesn't correspond to 068 degrees inbound to Stavanger. So the way we could calculate it is simply to load a new route in SkyVector and load the route in reverse. That would give us the angle you would leave Stavanger and the angle you would arrive into Aberdeen. So we do one route for the departure radials and the reverse route for the arrival radials and just take 180 degrees off them. I hope that makes sense. To keep it straightforward though, let's have a look in this sim, because otherwise we'll just tie ourselves in knots at the beginning. So, this is the FlyJSim 737-200. Is MD old enough to remember the tin mouse models on FlightSim 2004, the freeware 737s? They're a lot of fun. The 737-200 is fairly basic compared to a more modern version. Yeah, Tin Mouse 2 was awesome. I had a lot of fun with it back in the good old freeware days. This is a nice looking model of a 737. I don't tend to do reviews. I don't like doing reviews because I think that ultimately it's self-defeating. You know, I'll show you what the aircraft looks like. You can make your own decisions on it. For my tastes, it's perhaps a touch on the shiny side. It may be something to do with Vulcan because it's been out for a few years now. But yeah, it's all right. It's a nice visual model. There's some oddities around the wing flex and the slats that are a little bit frustrating, and a few little things on the inside. You can see the shine over the back here. It's like it's had a ceramic wrap applied to it rather than just being painted. But you know, it's good fun to fly. I think that's probably the most important thing. So let's jump inside. It's all still switched off at the moment. Let's put some people and some fuel on the aircraft. You flew the Tin Mouse as well, Winston, huh? I think we're about the same age then. So I'm going to put the weight and balance screen up here, and we need to open the exits before we can load anything as well. So I'm going to put the forward entry and the air stairs. The forward cargo door should be enough. Freshly waxed. Yeah, that's true. I don't know many 737s that were that clean in regular service. So we've got the option here to load. I'm just going to move the screens around because whenever I watch the streams back, I'm conscious of the fact the chat kind of overlays the screens, which isn't really ideal. With the aircraft as it's implemented, you've got a trip distance calculation here. Now, I'm always a little bit wary of these because I want to know how much fuel that's calculating for reserve. So what I'm going to do is just knock the fuel down until the trip distance reads 0 or close enough. So there's what, about let's say 1.5 tons they're calculating as a reserve fuel. So that's okay. So the trip distance needs to allow for an alternate as well as the flight. So Stavanger is about, what do we say, 600 miles. So if I just give it enough fuel for about 1,000, that should do is hopefully around about 7 tons or so, based on ballpark estimates. Let's see. Yeah, that's not too bad, is it? Just over 7 tons. I think that works. And we'll put some people in as well. High density oil rig workers, so let's just fill the thing with passengers and some cargo as well. The flight dynamics on this aircraft are fairly good for the most part. It does have a little bit of an interesting characteristic at aft CG, so I'm going to put the cargo in the front hold just to adjust the CG ever so slightly towards the front here. That gives me a gross weight at the moment of 49.5 and a max landing weight of 47.5, so we'll definitely burn off 2 tons in the hour it's going to take us to get there. Excellent. With that, we can probably close the doors. It's got air stairs at front and back as well. Let me get rid of this screen here. The air stairs on the front are fairly conventional for 737 air stairs. On the back, it's got this weird door folding down air stairs arrangement, and I've never seen that on a 737 at all. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure the cabin crew wouldn't really like it. We can go back and have a look at it, in fact. Let's just pop out here, open the door. I just popped that off just now. So you've got a fully modelled cabin, if that's your sort of thing. I don't mind really. But when you get all the way down the back, it's got a reverse texture on this here. It's just using one texture to cover both sides of that, and I don't mind that. I wouldn't have another texture loaded just for the sake of something I'm going to look at once. But look at these steps down the back, you know, just filling up the entranceway there. Excellent. Yeah, it was on sale. It was $45 for a few weeks there, but it's now back up to $70. So, shall we close the rest of the doors? Otherwise, I'll just forget about them. So just to double check, we've got about 7 tons of fuel on board. We've got passengers, we've got freight. Let's see if we can work out how to remember to fly 737. accordion stairs, Toto. It's an interesting system. I've never ever seen a 737 have that. Required on combi models since the front was taken. Ah, that makes perfect sense, Amy. Absolutely. Yeah, I can see how that would be a thing. Right. So 737 Classic. We don't 737 Original or Jurassic, depending on which parlance you like. I noticed Pom got in there with the Jurassic tractor emotes, which I quite liked. I'm going to steal those. All that we're going to do is put the battery power on. And remember, I don't do the normal safety checks on the aircraft because it's just time consuming, really. We're going to go top to bottom, left to right, and flick on the switches that we're going to have. So I'm going to put the yaw damper on. That won't come to life until we get hydraulics. Coming down here, don't need the fuel pumps just now because we're still running on battery. We do a standby power check, nothing there. We'll put on the emergency lights. We've got the no smoking and fasten seatbelts on because all the fuel's on board. We'll leave that just now. We'll leave the pressurization, and we can put on the position lights only come on when we've got external power. So let's do that. It's in here. No, not that one. This one. I would have preferred it if they put options for setting up the sim in one panel and options for flying the aircraft in another panel. So having the GPU and the air cart in this screen here, this is all sim setup and this is actual flight stuff here. So this is a bit incongruous in the options menu. But you know, just maybe that's personal preference. Here's the GPU. You can hear a GPU. I can't see a GPU, but again, maybe that's a Vulkan thing. It predated Vulkan by quite a bit. So with the GPU running, we're going to put the ground power in. How's the sound for everybody now? It's fired up. Just want to check I've got the balance right there. It's maybe a touch on the loud side. Swappy1234, thanks for joining. No worries at all. Have a good one. Excellent, all good. Thanks, Yearning. Thanks, Toto. It's a bit loud in my ears, so I'll just turn that down and hopefully that won't affect what comes out on the stream. So where are we? We've got external power on. We'll put the yaw damper on. We could put one of the pumps on. I think it's the left aft pump for the 737 for when we start the APU. Honestly can't remember. Doesn't really matter. We'll put the window heat on. All four selected on. Diesel generator in the wheel well. Yeah, it feels that way. It certainly feels that way. One of the odd things about the original 737 compared to the NGs and the classics is the way the hydraulics are set up. So on the originals you had the A system on the engine and the B system on the elec, whereas on the more modern ones you had one elec and one engine pump on each system. If we put the elec pumps on just now, we'll pressurise the system, but have a look on the outside. You can see these leading edge flaps are still drooping here. That's because they're on the A system. So I'll put those back off. Just out of interest, you know, I don't know much about the 737 systems, but I know that this changed on the NG version, on the Classic and the NG. On the air conditioning panel here, there's no pack on at the moment because there's no APU running. We'd only run on a single pack when we had the APU up and running anyway. We're going to go up to 32,000 feet if we can. Solar is about 30 feet, and at 32,000 feet, 6.6 is our standby pressurization altitude. 6.6. Yeah, Toto, I was reading something about that forward, left, forward or aft, it doesn't really matter for the APU, but the aft one is easier to change if it fails early, so they use that out of preference. That's what one airline pilot wrote about it. I don't know if there's any truth in the matter. So overhead is set up, just waiting to start. On the main panel here, well, we've got some bugs. I'm going to reset those just now, and I'll do the same for the FO to make sure that I've actually got valid bugs I'm going to use. We've got the instrument comparator, that'll be relevant a little bit later. We've got the heading bug, the course pointer. Nothing really to set up, it's really just the radios, and have a plan of action for getting out of here. So we get our air traffic clearance, they give us a transponder code, so I'll set that in. See if you can guess what it's going to be. Done. And then let's have a look at the route itself. So this is the departure out of Gatwick here. We're going to take off runway 26. We're going to fly on the Lambourne departure ahead, right, down towards Detling, and then up towards Lambourne. So we need Detling tuned. We're going to fly a course inbound to Detling. You can see the 079 course inbound to Detling. 257 is the runway heading, and the turn happens at 2.3D from the India Whiskey Whiskey 110.9 here. So let's see if we can make sense of that and put it into the radio aids here. If I pop that down there, hopefully the chat won't interfere with it as well. So it's got these weird radios. You've got a changeover, so the actual side that's being used as the main changes, but you can tune the main and you can tune the pre-select. It's really weird. Conquistador Del Rey, thanks very much for joining. No, you've not missed much at all. It's the FlyJSim 737-200. So I try and keep both of the radios, the captain's radio and the co-pilot's radio, set to the same frequencies for the most part. In this case, Detling 117.3, we'll put that up here because that's going to be the course we're turning inbound. 1173. And from Detling, we're going to go to Lambourne, that's 115.6, so I'll put that on the standby, 115.6. On the FO's side, although I like to keep it the same, I'm going to make it the same for Lambourne, just now, but we're going to have the DME, 110.9 for the initial turn. So as we turn the corner, we'd let the first officer change their nav radio over to point to Detling instead. But that's us set up for that part of it. For the heading, it's straightforward. It's the runway heading. I said that was 258. It's up here as well, 257. 257. And the course into Detling is 079. So let's put that on there and on here as well. We've still got the drag manipulators if you want to change it really quickly as well. Yeah, it's all mechanical selection, Toto. It makes sense for the generation of the aircraft, but when we're tuning it, we've got to remember that we have to always tune the one with the light off, otherwise it gets confusing. So on the panel here, this is the distance from the number 1 DME, and this is the distance from the number 2 DME. And you can see it's replicated on the first officer's side. He's got DME 1 and DME 2. Good evening, Vinny. Hope you're having a super evening down there. Thanks for joining the stream. So we're going to fly it on the runway heading out to, what did I say, 2.3 miles, so 2.3 on here, right turn onto 079, climbing up to 4,000 feet. So let's put 4,000 in there, and after D29 from Detling we can climb up to 5,000 feet. Hopefully that'll work out. It should be fairly straightforward, Vinny. It should be basically ahead, turn right, and then fly on a VOR. We're going to use the flight directors to help us out with it. So I'm going to put the flight director on heading, and I'm going to set a pitch scale. It doesn't have any speed reference system, so I'm just going to set the pitch to around about 15 to 20 degrees. At or aboves, yeah, absolutely. It's just a display thing. It doesn't have any real purpose on the FMS. Right, before we put the performance in, let's fire up the APU. So it's down here, go to on and then hold it to start. Wait for the APU to spin up. Takes a little bit of time. Never trust the FMS anyway. I have no FMS fitted to this aircraft. I'd prefer flying it without the FMS, to be honest. The laminar FMS, it does the job, but really you have to be desperate, I think, to use that. If you don't have any other choice, it'll allow you to do an RNAV procedure or an RNAV route. But I don't trust it for approaches or anything like that. FMSs are complicated, Toto, aren't they? Cool, so the APU has spun up, the AGT's wound back, or it's just about to wind down again. You'll see the APU gen available light comes on. The Siva's pretty good, or it was when I tried it about 5 years ago, Yearning 9. I've not used it much since then. Excellent. There we go. So the APU Gen off bus light comes on. So have a look at the lights here. If I switch the number 1 system on, the number 2 system on, you see the APU picks up the current. With that, the ground power, it should be off anyway, but I'll go into the options screen here and disconnect it. We get rid of the diesel engine sound. Excellent. Now the APU is on and we're on internal power, I'll put the other fuel pumps on, I'll double check the window heat's on, and we shall also... What else was I going to do? Oh yes, APU bleed comes on. You get the dual bleed light comes on, and we'll put one of the packs on for air conditioning cooling. Excellent. All we need to do now is to look at the performance. Oh, I was going to mention the instrument comparator as well. So the radios are showing different things at the moment, because obviously the first officer's side is looking at the ILS to give us the DME, whereas the captain's side is looking at Detling for the departure. That's why the instrument comparator lights are on here. When you've got these old systems, these are all mechanical systems, mostly all mechanical or electromechanical. There's a comparator in here which is looking at both instruments and it'll flash a light if there's a discrepancy. So the aircraft is actually monitoring both instruments, and if one is different from the other, it'll flash the light here. It's really quite clever. Nice farming machine. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've not found the power takeoff yet for it though. We can cancel the comparator lights for the time being because that discrepancy is something that we did on purpose for this. So let's have a look at the performance. It's in here. Is it in here? No, it's not in here. It's this. They provide the takeoff and landing cards, which is really quite useful. So I'm going to set, what should we do? Let's do a flaps 5 departure, and I'll just double check my CG is 21%. So with the speed cards, all we're going to do is put the bugs where they need to be. We can do it ourselves, or we can click the button here. I'll do it myself. So I'm going to set the top bug to 210, that's the clean speed for the aircraft. It's either 210 or 220, I think it's 210, doesn't really matter. V2 is 143, so let's put the internal bug on that. You see as I move the internal bug, there it's 160 something, it's mirrored on the other side as well. That's the reason the internal bug's used for the V2. So put 143 on there, and with a modern 737, it'll give you a the flight directors will give you a speed reference on the departure as well, and it's V2 to V2 plus 15. Speaking of V2 plus 15, we'll bug that as well. That's 158, should be around there. And we'll put the V1 at 135 and rotate 138. So I just use both of those for that. Excellent. So when we're doing a flaps 5 departure, we go from flap 5 to flap 1, and we do that at V2 plus 15. And when we go from flap 1 to flap 0, we select it at 190 knots and maintain 210 knots as the minimum clean speed. If it's a flap 15 departure, you go from 15 to 5, you do that at V2 plus 15, and then you go from 5 to 1 at 170 and 1 to 0 at 190. The speeds are identical to the classic 737. If you're looking at 737 speeds, just be aware there'll be a discrepancy before either 2001 or 2005 due to the rudder issues they had. They changed the speeds on them. So if you see a minimum clean speed of 200 rather than 210, it's probably the difference in the old speeds. But we've got the speed set, we've got the flight director set, it's in heading mode for the departure, the autopilot's obviously switched off, it's fairly rudimentary, we've got 4,000 on here. You know what, I think we might be ready to push back. What should we use for pushback? I think we'll use better pushback.
Ground to cockpit, please show me where you want to go.
We'll go there.
Ground to cockpit, tow is driving up.
Excellent. So with the tug on the way, we're going to put the anti-collision light on. That's the flashing red light on the roof and on the belly. That tells MD around the aircraft that it's about to move. We'll put the transponder to alt and on. That tells the tower that we're powered up and ready to go if they've got ground movement radar. It's maybe a more modern thing to do. You see a lot of people leaving the transponder till you get to the runway. But, you know, modern operations, big airports, transponder on before you move. Having done that, we'll check that the fuel pumps are on. Because the ground area is clear around the aircraft, we'll pressurise the other hydraulics. And everything else is ready to go. We've just got the pack to go off, the pressure to check, and then the engine to start.
All doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
Tug drivers appreciate the extra light. Oh yes, if you turn on the taxi lights when they're looking right at the front of the aircraft, they love that. Especially if you've got LED ones.
Strap and adapter in position. Release parking brake when ready to start pushbacks.
I think they're just being a bit insulting using the tiny little tug for the 737. I mean, it's better than that. I've got flight control caution. Oh, it's the hydraulics, that's fine. Right, parking brake is going off. I want to see a big tug pushing a 737. I love the look of the 737, the short ones especially. If you see them from the top, that's the classic 707 shape right there. That's the thing you want to see on a 707. 105 tons. It's tiny. Looks small. Right, he's given us clearance to start the engines, so the pack can go off. We'll check we've got pressure there. And we'll start engine 2 followed by engine 1. So we'll put the first engine into ground start. Check the start valves open. N2 is increasing. It's very similar to the CFM56 really, except for it's driven by the EPR here, and it's a lot louder. So waiting for about 20%. That'll do. Feeling. I'll keep an eye on the spill up and the EGT increasing. Oh, 40 psi is not too bad, Toto. It's about the normal. It's been so long since I did a crossbleed start, I can't remember what the actual minimum is on the Airbus. It's probably around 35. I believe the 757 uses the same fuselage frames, Captain Crash, but different at the nose obviously. But yeah, it's very similar. Right, that's started and stabilised, it's back to off, so let's start number 1. So obviously start valve, spinning up, oil pressure, all that good stuff. 20%, oil pressure's not moving just yet, but that'll do. Fuel comes in, there it goes. EGT is increasing, or exhaust temperature is increasing. How this sounds, too quiet, too loud.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Okie dokie. Parking brake is set.
Disconnecting tows. Stand by.
Excellent. Thanks very much on the sound reports there. As I said, if it gets too loud, just let me know. We'll have a look on the outside as well before we get airborne. Right, so the parking brake's set. We're going to put the APU, we're finished with that, but we need to put the generators online first. So generator 2, and the APU current drops off, the generator 2 current picks up, generator 1 picks up, APU drops off. We'll put the APU off bleed as well. We'll give that a second or so to sort its life out. We're going to put the pitot heaters on, check that the fuel pumps, hydraulics are set as they should be. Now we'll put the packs on.
Pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight. Excellent,
he's going to go. So the packs are on, the dual bleed warning's gone off. We're going to put the system to flight mode, that means it's going to pressurise. I'm going to put the... Actually, I should have looked this up. Do I need to set the engines to low ignition? Probably. Who knows? Can't do any harm. With that, we're finished with the APU, so I'll switch it to the off position, make sure it spools down, and then we'll do some pilot stuff down here. So it's a flaps 5 departure. flap 2 on the 737 doesn't really have any purpose whatsoever, and we don't arm the spoilers or the speed brakes on a 737. We check the trim though, so it's about 20%, it's kind of what we're looking for, and check the rudder trim is neutral. And there's no RTO position on the auto brake. Right, tug driver's gone. Before I go any further, I want to show you this add-on. I'm sure that everybody knows about this add-on and I'm the last person in the world to find out. But this is like a sound volume controller here. And what it does is, previously I was using the external sound slider here. This is just the X-Plane default slider. I was using that to turn down the external noise, but it turns down the engine noise as well. But this plug-in here, B2 volume control, it gives you a separate setting for internal sounds and external sounds. So I can adjust my external sounds to the right level whilst retaining the cockpit volume. It's really useful, so if you haven't used it, I highly recommend it. And I was flying previously with the external sounds all the way down here so that it wasn't too noisy outside, but you lose a lot of immersion in the cockpit that way. So well worth looking at it if you don't have something like that. Personally, I'd prefer if Laminar had renamed them from external internal to, I don't know, something like engines and ambient, but you know, there we go. So we've got flaps, we've got trim, the APU's off, we've flicked the switches. With that, we'll push the button here and make sure the master caution doesn't latch on. Yeah, it saves them per plane, Roslo, it's really clever. We're clear on the left side, we're clear on the right side, we're clear ahead, so let's have the taxi and the turn off lights on, and the brakes off. Off we go. It does sound good. Sounds good in a 70s sort of way. The little icon, Pilsnerish, that is to save the settings per aircraft. So if you've got one aircraft that's particularly loud, you can turn the settings down and save it for that aircraft. And you can change any of the sounds to have a different internal and external setting as well. But I've used it basically to turn everything up and then give me a master control. That's really my objective with it. So as we're talking about little visual issues, I want you to keep your eye on the slip ball here, not when we're turning left, but when we're turning right. Just a little visual thing. But I'm guessing not many testers actually flew instrument conditions properly with this aircraft. Right, we're going to turn left. Has it reset my bugs? It looks like it's reset my bugs automatically. When did it do that? I don't remember telling it to do that. Fix those. Watch out, Mr. Caterer. Yeah, it set the bugs again. No dramas. Right, flight control check, just to make sure that I've not done anything silly. All good. Oh, when you open the V-speed card, that's frustrating. I think once you've set them, it should leave them set until you click that set bugs button. But as long as we're aware of it, it's no problem. Taxiing out as well, we can put the transponder to TARA, that puts the TCAS system on, and we'll put the weather radar to weather and turbulence tilted up. And about 80 miles is good for the weather radar. Yeah, that's what I thought, Pilsner, but no biggie. So I'm going to take Alpha Sierra and hold at Alpha 2. Second left from here. So it's difficult to compare this with the IXEG model because they're trying to do different things. The cockpit geometry feels the same as the IXEG. It doesn't have that same lovely shake that the IXEG's got, but you can get that with other plugins, I guess. So see the slip ball that's pegged at the right hand side in that turn there? That's fine. we'll go straight onto the runway because we're not flying online tonight, so I'll put the inboard lights on, turn off lights off, taxi off, strobe lights on, and we can bing the no smoking signs for Deirdre down the back. Clear on the approach. So let's see if we can get this slip ball to move. No, it's gone out of view. Are we going to get to see it again? Keep an eye beside the airspeed indicator. I'll give it a bit of power on this corner. There you go, there's your airspeed, your slip ball hanging out the side. Just a bit weird. I only noticed it once, but now I've seen it, I can't unseen it. There she is there. That's no slip ball, it's a space station. Right. So on the runway, there's no auto thrust, there's no other stuff to do. We're just going to double check that I did the everything on the overheads to make sure there's nothing latched there. For setting power, it's 2.15 for the EPR, and I'm going to keep maintaining 2.15 by adjusting the power until we get to 80 knots, and then I'm going to leave it alone. Pitching up to 15 degrees and then adjusting the climb to keep the speeds between the orange bug and the first white bug there. And off we go. So, take off. Don't think you need to wait for a JT8 to stabilise. Here we go. So there's 2.15, and I'm just gradually increasing the power lever position to keep it at 2.15. There's the power set, so I don't need to adjust it anymore. I'll just leave it there. So we count to 5 seconds, looking for 5 seconds to 15 degrees. We've got a positive climb, gears coming up, and I'll just pitch to maintain about 160 at the maximum, so about 20 degrees initially. I'll just lower the nose down again, and we'll keep the speed where it needs to be. I'm slightly out of trim. There we go. No CTOT in this one, Pilsnerish. No, none at all. So the flight directors are giving me heading mode, but the pitch is really just advisory. There's 1500 feet. I'll just lower the nose. I'll make a power reduction to climb power. That's about 90% on the N1 gauge there. 1.85 should do it. Above plus 15, so flaps 1. Just adjust the power. This is something that FO would be helping out with. There's 2 miles, so I'll start the turn. Looking for about 25 degrees. And above 190, flaps up, and I'll just pitch and adjust the power. I want to stay below the flap limiting speed until I get the flaps up with no lights, which we have just now. But 210 to 220, I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to adjust the heading target, just so my flight director's giving me sensible guidance. So no more than 220, otherwise the turn radius will get rather large. And I'm looking for about 1500 feet per minute. There's 1000 feet to go. You can see the VOR indicator coming in as we turn as well. So the co-pilot could be doing other stuff at the moment, but because I'm still flying it, we'll leave that other stuff until we're sorted out with the autopilot on. It's just about prioritising what you're doing when you're single pilot. When we want to level off at 4,000 feet, it's a substantial power reduction in this aircraft, about 1.25 I think, there or thereabouts. Roll wings level. And we're okay to accelerate up to 250 knots. So I'll flick my flight directors over to Vorlock now. They should help me out a little bit more. We can put the flight directors into alt hold here as well. That'll give me sensible guidance. But really I could just put the autopilot in now. Autopilot, aileron and elevator. Switch it to Vorlock hold and alt hold. And we're sorted out. With the autopilot in, I'm going to switch the flight directors off so that I don't have two things to maintain. We'll switch off the condition, not the condition, that's a SAB. We'll switch off the ignition. I'll put the landing gear lever to the off position, and RTO, not a thing on this aircraft. We are pressurising. All good. So here we are, 29 miles from Detling, at 29 miles below 4,000 feet. That's perfect. And Acorn at 5,000 feet. See, it's just cruising up quite happily. You don't need to fly the speeds exactly, just have some power settings in mind. 1.3 EPR, it's a good place to be for 250 knots. And it's fairly smooth, yeah. So I want to climb up. Let's go up to 7,000 initially. So it'll be flight level 70. I'll put... now I've done it. There we go, 7,000. And to climb, I'm simply going to flick it from Alt hold to IS hold, and then give it a little bit of power. Thanks for joining the stream, Black Focus. Have a good evening, and look forward to seeing you again next time. Oh, my bad. There's one thing I didn't do, and that's to reset the speed bug target. There we go. So in the airspeed hold, it will pitch to follow the bug target there. Again, I was flying the SAB for a moment there, so it kind of does that when you change the IS hold. Come on, little 737, you can do it. Don't go down. There we go. That's caught me out a few times, Pilsnerish. Just one of these things. Incidentally, it's got control wheel steering, so if I switch it out of IS hold, I can just pitch up with the joystick, set it where I want it to be, and it'll quite happily follow it there. Or just hold that pitch attitude. And it'll still capture Alt from there as well. So without a vertical speed control, control wheel steering is maybe your next best bet for autopilot assistance. Just going to put 17.3 on the first officer side now, so he's looking at the same DME. Centralised. Awesome, and here we are flying out up towards flight level 70. Now, what if air traffic were to tell me I could proceed direct to Lambourne at the moment? How would I know if I could do that? Just allow Rossi's comment there. What I want to do is to keep the first officer looking ahead. So I'm going to put him onto Lambourne just now. I can see Lambourne, I can receive Lambourne, and I'm getting a good DME from Lambourne. Just going to level at 70. So if I wanted to fly direct to Lambourne, all I would do is stick the aircraft into heading mode. I'll do that by deselecting Vorlock and then flicking the switch down for heading, and it will turn around towards Lambourne. So I'm just using this needle here, nothing else. We've got Alt hold, so I'll come back to about 1.3 EPR. Oh, thanks Prosnish, much appreciated. I'll switch the radio on to Lambourne, and because I've been told direct Lambourne, I'm simply going to change the course pointer here until I get something that looks appropriate, and we'll flick it back into Vorlock hold. And now we're tracking nicely up towards Lambourne. Finish with the speed cards. And we're on the way. So let's get a big climb now. Let's go up to the cruising altitude, because you've seen a level off. It was fairly straightforward. Don't do what I did. Before you flick it into IS mode, make sure that your little bug here is aligned into IS, and then you should have a smooth transition into climb as you bring the climb power in. And climb power is going to be, as I said, 89–90%. I think it's about 1.8-ish. Yeah, there. That should do us. Climbing away. So where are we going to go when we get to Lambourne? Well, I've made it straightforward. I put all the frequencies and headings in an Excel sheet and then just printed it as a PDF and loaded it into Avatab here. So hopefully we can use this to help us out. Just give the sim a second. I'm just getting some stutters just now. I think it's just me doing something. Excellent. So 15 miles from Lambourne. From Lambourne we're going to turn and go to Brookman's Park. So remember, we want to keep the first officer looking ahead. Lambourne is on 15.6. I want to go to Brookman's Park, which is 17.5. So 17.5, the first officer can look ahead now, and I'll put 17.5 ready for the captain as well. So we've got the pointer, and we've got the DME. We're above 100, so I'll put the landing lights off. I'm going to keep the speed where it is at the moment, and you'll see why in just a second. It's only 11 miles between Lambourne and Brookman's Park. It's course 303 outbound from Lambourne and 303 inbound to Brookman's Park. So let's put it on the first officer's side just now. 303 is the inbound frequency. Inbound radial, sorry. And really, on such a short distance between the VORs, there's no point in me tracking Lambourne outbound only to switch to Brookman's Park inbound. I'll change over and follow Brookman's Park 303 straight away. So to do that, again, I'll just straighten up the heading bug. I'll put the aircraft into manual mode. I'll put it into heading select to stop it wandering around. And then I'll change my course to 303. And I'll switch the... Actually, I'll leave the radios just now. So with the radio set, I've still got Lambourne ahead of me, and I've got Brookman's Park here. The course pointer is ready to intercept. So as I get closer, maybe about, the first officer can keep an eye on it. But when I get to maybe about 5 miles before, maybe 4 miles before, I'll switch over the radio source to the Brookman's Park, and then I'll put it into nav hold, and it should all work out. Brooklands Park. Brookman's Park. Brooklands Park is somewhere else, I think. So there's 5 miles. Does it look like it's coming in? It should start to come in. What's our difference here? Yeah, we're about 12 degrees just now. That should do us. So I'll change the radio source on to 17.5. You see both are pointing the same direction now. And this is where having the RMI really helps. You can see how far from the desired radial you are. There it's coming in, so we'll put it into forelock, and it will turn and intercept. I'm going to put the heading bug where it needs to be as well, because it may be slightly lazy on this intercept. You know, it does tend to wander around a little bit, the 737. And after Brookman's Park, it's Pole Hill, 112.1. So we'll find the side the lights are off, 112.1, 112.1. And the course to from Brookman's Park to Pole Hill is 303 outbound and 329 inbound. So let's put 329 on the right hand side. We'll get the first officer looking ahead again. So if we get direct to Pole Hill, we can see if we're receiving it. It's 148 miles. Brookman's Park and Barkway, Brooklands Park. Well, there's Brooklands south of Heathrow, isn't there? Where Vickers aircraft were made. Excellent. So 7 miles to go. We can probably start accelerating as well. So I'm going to take it out of airspeed hold. I'm just going to reduce the pitch attitude ever so slightly with control wheel steering. Down to about 1,000 feet a minute initially. And we're going to try and capture about 275. So there's the first officer's gauge looking at Pole Hill already. It's coming in quite close. It's pretty good. 5 miles to go. So we'll go back into manual mode, heading select, set my course outbound, it's 303 here, sorry 330 here. And in this case we're going to follow Brickman's Park outbound on 330 for 140 miles. About midway between them we'll change on to Pole Hill and count down. So very similar to what we did in the TU-154. 3 miles to go, it's a reasonable point to start turning, so I'll just turn it on the heading bug. The first officer can keep an eye on what we're doing with his instruments. And off we go. It's not even called Brooklands Park. What's it called now? Is that where Mercedes-Benz World is? So it's just approaching the bug target speed. We'll flick it back into IS hold mode, and with that we'll turn the seatbelt signs off, or auto, and let Deirdre start working down the back. And we are pressurising, so we are on the way. Let me have a look at the maps here. Just Brooklands. So this is not far away from where Winston's flying, I guess. Pilsner's with his Surrey bias. Yeah, so you've got Brooklands Park, Brookman's Park even, which we just turned at. And you've got Brooklands, which is... where's the M25? Weybridge? It's that sort of area here, isn't it? Somewhere around there, it's there. There's Brooklands with the banked oval, I think, and the Mercedes-Benz test world in there. And there's a little aircraft museum there as well. They've got a Concorde simulator at Brooklands. Excellent. So I'm still in heading mode. Let the aircraft settle down, tracking outbound. See, it's more or less on the bar, and we'll flick it back onto VOR lock mode, and it should lazily intercept. I've never been to Elstree, Winston. Evening, the Matium. Hope you're having a good one. Thanks, Conquistador Del Rey. Yeah, hopefully we get to Norway. Fingers crossed. Have a good evening. I never had the FS Labs Concorde Captain Crash. I had the previous one, the SST Sim Concorde. So one of the little oddities for those of you that like perfection in your sims is the fact that this deviation bar here should not be rolling with the attitude director here. That should remain level. That's a fixed part of the instrument. It doesn't rotate with the ball. But that's a very minor thing. It only really annoys you if you do a lot of close-in intercepts on the ILS. It's very obvious when you're doing that. But just a little thing. There's only a few little things with this aircraft. It's really very enjoyable. If you're into your visuals, and I said, I've run out of ortho. There we go, the end of the world. I should really fix that. If you're into visuals with the aircraft, it's got wing flex, and the 737 doesn't really have a lot of wing flex. Just going to use my sound thing here to put that down a little bit. The 737 doesn't have a lot of wing flex. The wing flex in this model is slightly overdone. One of the symptoms of this wing flex is the fact the slats have got this odd clipping behaviour here. You see the slats are now out of line on the leading edge as a function of the wing flex. It doesn't annoy me because visuals are visuals, you know, the aircraft flies nicely enough, but if you're obsessed with visuals or you like the visuals to be perfect, then this would probably be an OCD sort of thing. Just an FYI if you're thinking about buying it. So we've got Brickman's Park 25 miles ahead of us, Pole Hill 160 miles ahead of us. That adds up to about 140. Yearning, I only noticed it because I had the version 2 727, and the version 2 727 would flap its wings like crazy. you know, you fly it with turbulence and it was like having wings made of soggy pasta. But as I said, it doesn't annoy me. Be nice if they fixed it though. So there's a wing flex setting in PlaneMaker, Toto, and I did have a mess around with that to see if I could minimise the wing flex, but it didn't seem to have any effect, so I think it's part of the 3D model, this one. What else should I be doing on a 737? I always get this feeling I've forgotten to do something. It's got no lights on, that's usually a good sign. It's not hiding anything from me, that's also a good sign. Seems okay. I do like the way it flies. It's for hand flying, it's pretty good fun. Okay, I understand. So it's not deforming, it's not bending the wing as such. I guess the wing is sliced into multiple parts and it's animating them based on the G-load or something. Excellent. Well, I mean, it's understandable then. If it's a limitation of the underlying sim, then it's nothing really the developers could do about it. My preference is not for a lot of wing flex. You know, aircraft like this, it's got a fairly short wing. It's an older aircraft, so it's probably built a little bit heavier. It's not carrying a lot of mass outboard, so there's not a lot of mass damping happening along the wing. You'd expect it to be fairly rigid out here. And the NG is a lot more flexible, shall we say. But on the originals and the classics, there's not a lot of wing flex on them. Certainly my experience as a passenger. Your mileage may vary. Excellent. So what I was hoping to show with this stream today is the fact that although this aircraft has got a very basic navigation fit, that doesn't really stop you having fun with it. You don't necessarily need to use the FMS. Now, I understand why you'd want to use the FMS. I was running this a couple of days ago just to make sure there's no oddities with the route or anything unusual like that. And I really wanted to go and visit the toilet, but I didn't want to pause the sim. And obviously with the FMS you can do that because it's going to be fine. But with a VOR 10 miles ahead, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to pause it then. So I understand why the FMS is important. But for a 2-hour flight, I find it a lot more engaging just to get there yourself, basically. You see that we're still following the airway. It's a valid airways routing we're flying today. We're doing 0.67, so when we get to about 0.7, I'll have to start edging the speed back to maintain 0.7, 0.72 for the climb. It is a little bit... it feels a bit underpowered on the top, at the high altitudes, but I've got no experience of operating a JT8 aircraft, so maybe that's how they are. Maybe that's how they are. It looks good though, apart from the little bit shiny textures. It may be the third-party texture I've got, it may not be the model. Apart from it being slightly over shiny, it's a nice looking aircraft. I like the look of the little engines on it. I love the profile view of the nose of the 737, like I said. Looks good. I do wish we had a 707. If one of our lovely developers decides to give us a 707 with a fully simulated carousel navigator, I will guarantee you I will do a one-to-one real-time live stream transatlantic flight for charity in a 707, as long as I've got a carousel navigator and shared flight. Guarantee it. Or a DC-8. I'd prefer the 707, but yeah, DC-8 would be good as well. 747-200, it's going to be good, yeah. I want them both, to be honest. I don't know which one I want more. The thing about the 747 is I'm holding out hope that somebody someday will give us a 747-400, a proper 400. That would be really nice. Because you can do everything you can do with a, you know, they were still flying until last year in major international service. So you can still do all your normal kind of flying with that aircraft. Whereas with a 747-200, any that are flying today have got the FMS navigation systems, which is not what feeless aircraft will have initially. I remember the IXEG 707, absolutely. Flew that a lot. Now Winston, we'd have to have all of the British T-tail rear engine jets. Couldn't miss out the 111, otherwise people would be unhappy. So 140 miles between Brookman's Park and Pole Hill. 330 outbound, 329 inbound. You can see on the outbound it's bang in the middle, and on the inbound it's close enough. It's either slightly off or slightly off. So let's take 329. So what we'll do is we'll transfer it over. I'll stick it into manual mode just now. That'll hold wings level. I'll change the course. I'll change the radio. So they're both looking at Pole Hill. We should ident them as well, but I don't have a lot of luck identing in X-Plane. Check the needles make sense, which they do. Check the DME is counting down. They should both be the same. Yep, I'll put it into forelock and it'll meander across and pick up the inbound radio. So again, now that we've got the main, or the number one system navigating to Pole Hill, I want to have the co-pilot side, the first officer side, looking at Tala, in case we get a direct Tala, so 113.8. This side with the light off, 113.8. And this isn't the only way to do it. This isn't the only way to sequence your radios. It's just the way that I kind of got used to doing it in the sim. If I switch it, it'll help. There we go. I've not tried that 744 yet, Yearning. I've watched a few videos of it. It does look good. Just going to give her a little bit more beans. Tala, 173 miles. The inbound to Tala, so Pole to Tala is 339. Put that on there just now. What's my optimum, out of curiosity? Which one is it? Is it this one? No. This one? No. This one? No. So it's going to be that one. Optimal, flight level 325. I'm sure it's 89%. Maybe it's 93 or something. I mean, 500 feet a minute's enough. There we go. So we can see the little wiggle on the airways track as we transfer it over from one VOR to the other. But fundamentally we're flying inbound to Pole Hill. Pole Hill to Tala is 114 miles, so we will track Pole Hill outbound, which means as we go overhead we'll change the course, but we won't swap frequencies. Hope that makes sense. So, short distances between VORs, track the VOR you're flying towards. Long distances between VORs, fly outbound on one and inbound on the other. And you'll see that when we leave Aberdeen, because as we cross overhead, Aberdeen will not be able to receive Stavanger. No worries, Vinny. I'll try my best. Usually in the cruise it's fairly safe. Usually. No guarantees. So yeah, I got a new headset because my old headset was creaky and rattly, which is quite annoying. My new headset has got a side tone, which means I can hear myself in the headset when I'm talking in the microphone, which is pretty good. The only slight annoyance compared to my old one is it doesn't have a mute button in the cable. The mute button is on the ear cup instead, which means if I want to use the mute button, you get a little that kind of noise, which is not ideal. But other than that, it sounds a lot better. I hope the audio from the microphone is a bit better as well. It's a bit more sensitive. There's maybe a few more background noises creeping in on it, but it did sound better on the few recordings that I did to test it. Excellent. I'm amazed at the teams that are doing this, the freeware teams that are doing all the work on these models on X-Plane and on Microsoft FlyJSim. I think it's amazing the amount of time that people are spending with these sims for free. All I really hope is that they've got the required reference materials and that they are consulting with people that understand how the avionics and stuff works, because otherwise it can get a bit you're spending a lot of time making something that isn't quite right. I'd rather they spend time getting it right. Yeah, Winston, some of the headsets, some of the aircraft I fly for work, some of them have side tone and some of them don't. When you go to an aircraft that doesn't have a side tone, it sounds like you're speaking with your head in a bucket. It's really weird. Fly them all, Captain Crash. Which one do you want to fly first? That's the most important. The Beaver is good fun. I hope you're having as much fun with the Thrander Beaver as I was having with the SMS one. We were talking about X-Plane textures a couple of weeks ago as well, and this is one of the areas that shows it off. So as we come into the north of England here, as we approach the Lake District, the textures don't look too bad. I think we're not at the Lake District yet. This will be Derbyshire, I'm guessing. Yeah. So anywhere there's some hills, there's a bit of variety on it, but whenever it's flatlands, as you see in the distance there, it's a bit samey with X-Plane. So without the ortho, as long as you get some terrain around, it doesn't look too bad. But if you're out in the plains, it might be a bit dull. There's 1,000 feet to go. I looked at that, Winston. You're talking about something like $150, $200 for an aviation twin plug adapter to adapt it to USB. It's a bit excessive, really. Anyway. It is what it is. So who in the chat doesn't have the 737, the 737-200? If you don't have it, what do you think about it from having seen so far? Is it something you'd be interested in flying? Or steam gauge is just a passing interest? Yeah, it should just about get there. I need to look up the climb thrust setting total. I may have that wrong. Maybe it's only 0.89 at lower levels. Maybe you just bump the EPR as you go. It's nowhere near the temperature limits, so it's really, if we got down here, it's not far off the N2 yellow band. If I put it right on the yellow band, what's my temperatures are good, and good, fuel flow's 3,000 pounds an hour. You bought the 727, the Mateo? I had the I've got the 727 version 2, I had version 1. I never upgraded to version 3. I didn't use it a lot. But this is more like it. I can get on okay with a 737 because it's fairly slow and mechanical. Yes, I bought this because I wanted to recapture some of those tin mouse days, Winston. I think you probably don't need both. The IXEG can do everything this can do. You can do VOR navigation with the IXEG. You can fly it without using the flight directors, but this can't do what the IXEG can do. Right, we are 7 miles from Pole Hill, so I'll flick it into manual mode just now. I'll check my little thing. From Pole Hill we are going inbound on 329, outbound on the 339. Inbound on 339. So I'll simply use my heading bug. I'll put the heading bug kind of halfway between them. Click into heading select mode. And we'll keep the VOR down the left hand side of the aircraft and then track the VOR radial outbound. It does remove that temptation, doesn't it, Pilsnerish? Oh, we more or less went straight overhead. So when you're trying to capture a VOR having passed overhead, my preference is to do it on the heading pointer, or on the heading select, rather than go straight into VOR mode, because it's very sensitive when you're close in. If you fly it outbound on the heading pointer until you get on course and about 10 miles, 12 miles away, then it stabilises quite nicely. .78 is maybe a bit fast for a 737. What should we set for cruise power? Maybe about 83. Oh, hang on, that's 90. About 88 maybe. About 74 should do it. The SIVA is the carousel navigator is fascinating. Once you've grasped how it works and what you're doing with it, it really is just a fantastic way to fly. Right, 11 miles, we're on the VOR, we'll click it into Vorlock mode and we'll track outbound. Oh, it's going to dance around a little bit, that's fine. So Pole Hill to Tala, 114 miles, that plus that, yeah, it's close. Yes, exactly, Toto. Exactly. It's got the space for it down here. It really needs that. It really needs an FMS to go with the aircraft. Some of them, I've seen an FMS and a dual display retrofit as well. Thanks, Yanni9. Thanks for joining the stream once again. Have a good evening, and hope to catch you again later. So I've seen 707s that were fitted with EFIS displays from the NG, I think, you know, the Air Force 707 KC-135s. They're not the same, obviously, but very similar. They were fitted with EFIS displays. I don't know if any of the 727-200s have. Amy's coding something that begins with a U, ends with an S and has 3 letters. If the middle letter isn't N, everybody's going to be very disappointed. Cool. UPS. Could be that. Are we getting a DC-10, Amy? We really want a DC-10. Whilst we're flying along here, let's have a look at the Stavanger Approach. We're not going to use the charts really for Stavanger. We're going to do something different. because I'm conscious of the fact that not everybody has Navigraph, or indeed wants Navigraph. If you're flying this sort of aircraft, you don't really need it. The en route charts are pretty useful, but you can get away with SkyVector. Let's look at the approach charts for runway 18. And you see that it's an ILS. You'd be radar vectored, but they've got RNAV waypoints defining everything. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to fly a reversal procedure in the overhead SOLA VOR, and then we'll fly outbound. We'll fly a procedure turn to the west and come back round and intercept the ILS. So when you've got an airfield with a VOR and an ILS, it's fairly straightforward to make up your own sim-friendly procedure turn. So you don't necessarily need the plates. As long as you've got some awareness of what's going on at the airfield, you can make a fairly reasonable attempt at an approach. Procedure turn to Puerto Rico. So one of the differences, did I set my cruise power? I did. Hang on. We are still tracking away. Yeah, exactly. That's I think that's is that holding in lieu of procedure turn? Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, you're right. Let me change over my nav just now so I don't get distracted talking about something else. It was in here. Where are we going? We're going from outbound from Pole Hill, inbound to Tala. Excellent. So I want to put, you know what, I haven't kept this up to date, have I? Tala 13.8 goes in here. Okay. And if I click it into manual mode, change the radio over, it's ahead of me, it's pointing ahead, it's centralized, and it is counting down. Right, back into VOR. So we're now navigating inbound to Tala on 13.8. After Tala, it's Perth on 10.4. 10.4. Right, and the Perth would be 036 outbound, 037 inbound, so 037 on here. 037. So one of the interesting things that's different compared to the US, if I remember correctly, is the criteria for going outbound on the procedure. In the US, the protected area is such that you can fly to the beacon and fly outbound on the procedure. Under PANSOPs, you have to be within 30 degrees of this track. Now, I've chosen SOLA because it is basically a north-south runway. It's 179, but let's just call it north-south. Okay? I would need to be within a 30-degree sector either side of the outbound track. So I'm going to fly outbound, make a procedure turn, and then come back inbound. I need to be within 30 degrees of that outbound track in order to go outbound. Now, I'm coming in from over here, so I'm not within that sector. I wouldn't be able to come in from the west there and turn and go straight outbound. That wouldn't be within the rules. So I have to fly essentially a hold entry here. I'll do a direct entry into the hold. That'll align me with the procedure, and then we'll fly outbound. So I don't need to actually enter the hold, I don't need to do a full lap of the hold, I just need to fly the hold entry, the direct entry, and that'll align me with the procedure outbound. But hopefully that'll make sense when we get there and actually do it. Hey Vinny, welcome back. You didn't miss much. I nearly got lost, but we managed to avoid that for the time being. We are currently tracking inbound from Pole Hill to Tala. We're tracking Tala 339 inbound. A stop pancake or a warning, that would actually probably be a very useful thing for the CL650 to have. Did everybody catch Toto's stream showing off the Challenger and the state of progress on it, the FMS? Doesn't it look fantastic? I'm super excited for it. Every week that we get closer, I get more and more excited. It's funny how Sim's go in waves. You know, there's a few nice biz jets coming down the line this year. Don't forget to breathe. It's awesome. It'll be awesome. You see over the lakes, this is the Lake District here. I can never remember which one, but we've got Windermere and Coniston over here. This is Morecambe Bay, you've got the Solway here. Over the lakes, the textures, in my opinion, don't look that bad. But when you get, you can see my authors starting again, but when you get to plain countryside, there's Carlisle Airport. In plain countryside it's a bit samey, shall we say. But back into Scotland with Author. So other than simming, has everybody had an exciting week? What have you been up to this week? Have you been out of the house at all? Have you been allowed to go out of the house at all? Exactly, Pilgrimage. We're going to need to find some way of monetizing that though. If we don't monetize it, it's not going to work out. Corporate virtual pilot life dedicated to Challenger and shared flight. It involves a lot of hanging around waiting for your VIPs to show up. Nothing too exciting. Sometimes it's good when life isn't too exciting. Exciting can be a bit much sometimes. It's like going flying. You don't want airliner flying to become too exciting. It just wants to be happy. You don't want it to be exciting. Yes, exactly, Toto. Corporate pilot is nothing if you don't have free cookies at the FBO. Copious amounts of tea and biscuits. I flew from Phoenix down to Yuma, Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, which is also, there's a civilian side to it. We flew down there because apparently there was cookies at the FBO. It was a training flight, obviously, so it doesn't matter where you go, you have to do the hours. So we flew down to Yuma. It was a Sunday, and obviously the FBO was fuel only on a Sunday, so we flew for 2.5 hours in IMC conditions to go and get cookies, free cookies, which didn't appear. The FBO person took pity on us, and they went, one of the ramp agents went round to Firehouse Subs around the corner and came back with subs from there, and that was awesome as well. It's a nice thing about being in the US that you get services at FBOs as opposed to in the UK they just take your money for nothing, mostly. Hoovering simulation crammed in. Is that to clean up all the cookie crumbs that we've left on the carpet, Amy? So, we are approaching Tala. We've got 10.4. You might be wondering why I haven't tuned Perth directly. Let's put it on just now. Notice my DME counter is showing nothing, but I do have an indication on the RMI here. So from Tala to Perth, the inbound is... did I not change that? Is that the previous one? What have I done? That's the wrong one. Tala to Perth is 001. There we go. Perth is a VOR, but there's no co-located DME. So people often assume that they're one and the same, but a VOR and a DME are two separate devices that are often co-located. So with Perth, there's no DME, only the VOR. Just checking I've done that right, because I set something wrong. I don't like doing that. 001. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, Winston, we're talking about Toto here. I'm expecting the level of crumbs to vary depending on the particular brand of biscuits we have purchased. So, for example, if it was... Are Jaffa Cakes international? I think Jaffa Cakes are fairly international. Jaffa Cakes don't really leave crumbs, but you know, shortbread biscuits leave crumbs everywhere. So, different levels of crumbs, depending on your type of biscuits. That's what we expect in a modern simulator. There's 8 miles to go towards Tala. I'm going to pop the aircraft back into manual mode and I'll stick it into heading select momentarily. We're going to fly, you know what, we're going to change over straight to Perth because it's only a short hop to Perth, and let me put that back just now because I need to see the DME for it, but it's going to be 001. Spinny numbers, so you can just about see it coming in just now. We're 5 miles. Keep them in the fridge. Who puts Jaffa Cakes in the fridge? Or shortbread biscuits, that's even worse. There's the VOR going around the left hand side of the aircraft, so I'll turn on course. While we're turning, we'll flick the switch, and that's both radios looking at Perth. 001 is what we want for Perth because it's the inbound side we're flying, and I'll just stick it into warlock mode. So again, these little wiggles that you have overhead VORs as you're flying the intercepts, that's entirely normal. That's what flying used to be like, unless you're really good at it. You see the deviation bar rolling with the ADI. It's a minor thing. So how are we going to tell how far away we are from Perth? Because Perth there's no DME. We're not seeing any DME indications now. I know it's ahead of me. I could sit here, staring at the pointer, waiting for the pointer to spin around, or we could tune it up to Aberdeen on the other side. Aberdeen is 114.3. So let's put that on this one here. 114.3. We'll have them looking ahead. I'll tune it on here as well, but I'll not switch it over. And now we've got a DME to Aberdeen. Now from Perth to Aberdeen is 64 miles, so there's Perth, outbound on 036, inbound on 037, inbound on 037. 64 miles, and we've got 104 miles to go. So basically we can use the Aberdeen VOR as a reference. We could also have Tala tuned behind us, but it's easier to use the one that you're going to. So if Tala was 57 miles behind us, then we're overhead Perth, and if Aberdeen is 64 miles ahead of us, we're also overhead Perth. It doesn't need to be precise. Oh, disaster, Captain Crash, there's nothing worse. Welcome on board your shiny new aircraft. Check out my rubber sole marks. I should probably get rid of these bugs as well. Let's get rid of those. It's a bit cloudy down there today. I've removed 3G FPS. I was doing some testing of some other stuff and it was kind of getting in the way, so I don't have the ability to make the clouds disappear straight away. However, if can I zoom below the clouds? Should be able to. And then do this. Oh, we're on a hillside somewhere. Where are we? Oh, look at that. That was lucky. Is that Kirk Newton? That looks like Kirk Newton. Is that the 4th? Is there Edinburgh? Yeah, there's Edinburgh. Awesome. brilliant. It's silly things like that that happen when you're down route, or when you don't have a choice and you're tight on time, Captain Crash. I've got to work without my tie, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just put my jacket on, and then like, oh, I don't have a jacket either. Oh well, I guess I'll be buying a tie in the terminal that looks something like my work tie. You know, just self-conscious when you're slightly out of uniform. Hope you don't run into your boss. So is everybody keeping up with the navigation? Do you all know where we are? Because I kind of know where I am, not 100%. You see, we're tracking inbound to Perth, so we went overhead Tala, exactly on course. Because I'm using Perth, we are slightly off. Why am I slightly off? Is it because I've used the wrong value? No, 001 inbound to Perth. But it's getting closer as we get there. You know what it is? It's the fact the line isn't going to Perth anymore. The line goes to Findo, but it used to be a Perth intersection. You see what's happening here is the airways are getting ready for the VOR to be removed. So all the intersections, they're using the intersection for the airways rather than the VOR. Still good. I find I have to fly this aircraft with the lights on. If I turn the panel lights off, it's a bit on the dull side. I don't know if the real 737's like that, but it needs a little bit of light to make it bearable. It's difficult to fly in the UK anyway, Pilsners. If you want to fly realistic routes, it requires either a little bit of local knowledge or a little bit of research. But fundamentally in the UK, if you go northbound on the middle of the country and southbound on the west side of the country, you're doing okay there. And pretty much everything east of where we flew today, we flew from Brookmans Park to Pole Hill to Tala. Everything east of there is where all the air bases were. So there's not much east of there. So we said 64 miles from Perth to Aberdeen, so again we'll transition straight to Aberdeen. We'll fly inbound to Aberdeen rather than tracking outbound to Perth. We can see Aberdeen is kind of coming in at the moment, it's just about getting there. I thought those heading bugs were linked. Obviously not. Doesn't matter. Yes, exactly, Totorico. But of course, the interceptors were English Electric Lightnings, so really the intercept was done by the tanker, and the Lightning just brought the missiles along. There's pictures somewhere on the internet of a VC-10 shadowing some bears in the Faroes Iceland Gap, and it just so happened to be a VC-10 that they painted tactical camo on for some experimental reason, so it had the green and grey camouflage on the top surface. An airliner painted up like a World War II fighter shadowing some bears out over the Atlantic. It's quite the scene. I think it's only a black and white photo, but it's still, you know, it looks quite Cold War. Quite surreal, in fact. There we go, overhead. I should have been paying attention and not chatting. We'll fire the turn and put it into heading mode. And what was I going to do? Yeah, go to Aberdeen. There. You see how easy it is to make a mistake when you don't have a countdown to the VOR? Hence why DMEs are so popular everywhere. 037, we're tuned to Aberdeen, and yeah, that'll work. Let me have a look at the link, Captain Crush. Yes, that exact VC10, but there's a picture of it shadowing the bears, which is especially cool. Right, 56 miles inbound to go. Do you know what? It's probably fine. We'll put it into Farlock and we'll just watch it wiggle its way back onto the centre line. Well, at least we caught it before we went too far off course, eh? Everybody wave to Amy. Amy's down there somewhere. Amy has new author photo. Where the bridge is gone? There's the bridges. Go away from the balcony. Right, just listen for us, Amy. I mean, you'll be able to hear us at this distance, I'm sure. That would be nice, Pilsnerish. I'll show you my frame rates. It's 40 frames a second. Maybe not so ideal with Orbex. Penny. Nice. So strictly speaking, at some point along this flight I should be changing my flight levels to an odd level, I think, but for the purposes of the sim it's largely irrelevant. I'll just leave it at 32 where it's flying quite happily. Now you see the 737 is doing a very lazy attempt at intercepting here. That kind of feels realistic. You know, it's going to wobble its way onto the airway here. We could help it out by getting it there with the heading pointer or the heading bug, but we'll just leave it and see what happens. It's one of the reasons why it's a good idea to always keep your heading bug centralized, so if something weird does happen, you can just click it into heading mode. So Aberdeen, we're tracking inbound on 14.3. If I want to look ahead, it's Sola now, 16.85. 16.85. I'll flick the first officer over, I'll get 16.85. Ready to go on this side. And it is course 068 outbound and 072 inbound, so there's 4 degrees of difference there. I'm going to put 072 on the FO side because that's it'll be looking at Sola. But because it's far enough away, we'll not be able to receive it. So we'll have to fly outbound on Aberdeen until we can receive Sola. Yeah, you do see that sometimes, Toto, where you stick it into heading mode and it does an aerobatic roll to the appropriate direction. It's quite exciting. Is it tracking mates? Thanks very much for joining the stream. Hope you're having a nice evening. We're in the FlyJSim 737-200, approaching Aberdeen in Scotland, and we're going to turn across the North Sea, fly towards Sola, Stavanger Airport in Norway. I can't look at a 737 without wanting a 707. It's an affliction. I need to fix that. So Pilsnerish, you've been flying this around the Canadian North. I do have a problem. My name's Graham. I like airplanes. It's a small problem. to be honest, there's not many aircraft in the sim that I don't enjoy flying. I like aircraft that are involving to fly. And if an aircraft does reasonably good radio navigation, and this is spot on. You know, it's doing what I expect. It gives me the tools to do the job. It may not be 100% right with a real 737. I don't know, but as you're familiar with the expression now, there's no real threads to pull on with the radio nav, so it's just enjoyable to fly it using the VOR. The only sort of aircraft that I don't really enjoy are aircraft that don't give you a lot, where you don't have a very well implemented radio system, or it doesn't have anything much beyond the default systems, and then you've got the default FMS as well. Because when you've got that, you're thinking, well, I think it's like I'm babysitting a computer game. Whereas when you're actually looking about radials and steering the aircraft and making mistakes and, you know, flying beyond Perth and then doing this lovely wiggle here, you're kind of involved in it. You're kind of part of the action. You know, that turn there, that turn was bad because I made it bad. But the turn before it was excellent because I made it excellent. You compare that with other aircraft that don't behave properly in RNAV, in lateral navigation. It's doing it wrong because of how it's been coded. So it's a bug report you've got to send in, or it's something developers have got to fix. Whereas with VOR navigation, it's a skill that you develop. Speaking of which, outbound from Aberdeen on course 068, I'm 10 miles from Aberdeen, so flick it into manual mode, check that the heading bug, again I've got shortcuts for this because it's really the only easy way to do it. Heading select, and I'll put 068. Right, so I am about 5.5 miles up, so when I get to maybe 6 miles here, we'll turn and we'll intercept. It's for quitters. Yeah, just make more airplanes, that's the solution. One of the aircraft that I really enjoyed flying from a few years ago, the videos are on the YouTube channel, was the Freeware DC-9. And I enjoyed flying it, despite the fact it had default systems. There was no advanced system modelling whatsoever. It didn't have a plug-in, it was just using X-Plane's own systems. But it flew nicely, it was kind of compelling to fly, and the radio aids worked. It was super fun. Continue the turn onto the outbound leg. Vague ideas for next projects turn into an expensive way to spend your winter, Amy. Gotta be careful. Right, last leg of the flight. It is 269 miles to go to Sola. That is basically overhead the airfield, so I want to get there about 4,000 feet. Just adjust the course ever so slightly. We'll just start the descent 100 miles out, that'll usually work. Doesn't need to be precise, we can refine it as we go. Captain Crash is fully on board with building the most detailed replica of the Hindenburg ever. More than a winter's work. You got the building blocks already? I'm always happy whenever there's a new product coming out that I'm interested in. I'm over the moon whenever there's a new product coming out that I'm not really I'm not so invested in the aircraft itself, but it's from a developer that I know will deliver good work. Then again, it's awesome as well. Alright, I'm going to flick the thing into Vorlock hold. We should track outbound. 15 miles, Aberdeen's behind us. Excellent. Landing elevation set already. All good. Vinny's found the photo, I think. That's the one, Vinny. I think it helps that the VC-10 with those refueling pods under the wings, yeah, it does look it's a bit of a combat load it's got on it. I think it's a fantastic looking jet, the VC-10. Not the most practical airliner in the world, you know, built for a role that ceased to exist before the thing was finished, but still enjoyable. It's still a nice aircraft. In the latter days of the VC-10 service, apparently they were doing the same flight numbers as the 707, and a lot of people were booking a lot of passengers were booking out the VC-10 flights rather than the 707 flights because of the better experience on board. I think the pressurization was to a slightly lower altitude, and it was a bit quieter in the cabin as well. Slightly more spacious because it wasn't very densely loaded. But the only VC-10s I remember seeing flying were the military ones. I'm not old enough to remember airline VC-10s. I can remember some Tridents at Glasgow in the well, I guess I was 7 or 8 years old. But no VC-10s. But that's exactly what it's built for. It's built for Nairobi, built for hot and high performance. Whereas Boeing decided to build an efficient aircraft and then just help the other countries build longer runways, shall we say. It's an easier way to do it in the grand scheme of things. So what we're waiting to happen is for the SOLA SOLA DME to pop to live and the VOR indicator come on. This is the last leg of the trip, so we're kind of finished with this chart just now. Does everybody understand what I was saying about getting the inbound radial in SkyVector? Did that make sense? Because I'm feeling it's maybe not the clearest explanation I could have given for that. The headings you get in SkyVector with nil wind give you the outbound. So if you start at Aberdeen, you'd fly course 068. You fly in a straight line, you don't turn, but if you start off on course 068, by the time you get to SOLA, you're effectively flying course 072, having made no turns. So in order to get that 072, you use SkyVector to plot the route from SOLA to Aberdeen. You go the other way, and then you take the value and you take 180 degrees off it. So you've got to do once around the route to get these courses here, and then another time around the route going back to front to get these courses, or the reciprocal of these courses. It's a bit of a fudge, but if you're flying somewhere that you don't have proper airways charts for, it's really the only way to do it. That I know of. If you know another way to do it that's easier, let me know. Thanks for joining the stream, Toto. Good luck with the rest of the coding, and enjoy yourself. Don't work too hard over the weekend. We can wait another few days. The MD-80 is a funny one, Vinny. It was much more... It wasn't very common to find an MD-80 in the UK. They did a lot of charter work, a lot of holiday work, but the domestic stuff was all sewn up with 757s and the homegrown aircraft that we had. Alpenflieger, thanks very much for following the stream, much appreciated. And Andre974 and Lee19871 as well. Thanks very much for the follows. The Pilsner's countdown can be negative if necessary. Pilsner's is counting down to the Challenger on the leading edge Discord. He doesn't have any inside information, he's just basing it on something he once heard, but I'm liking it, I'm liking the positive energy from it. This guy follows me everywhere. I cannot go anywhere without seeing that frigate. "57 miles, which means we have, what, about 200 or so to go? Yeah, they're very popular. Scandinavian love the DC-9 and the MD-80. I think we only had, I'm trying to think now, who else operated the DC-9? The British Midland had the DC-9. I don't know if there were any other major operators of the DC-9 in the UK. The DC-9 and the BAC-111 were fairly well matched in terms of specification, but also the 111 is unique in that it wasn't built to a government airline specification. So you have aircraft like the VC-10 that were built to a BOAC specification, and the Trident which were built to a BAA specification, both of which were too small. They ended up being too small because they were ordered based on a downturn that was only a transient downturn. It would be like today setting up an airline with 318s, because today we've got passenger loads in the single digits, but in a year's time those 318s will be too small again. Well, that's exactly what happened with the Trident and the BC-10, but the 111 was built as a commercial product. It wasn't built chasing a government sponsored project, and as a result the 111 had a fair degree of success outside the UK, which the Trident and the VC-10 really didn't have. So the VC-10 was the 111 was very popular. Lots of second-hand operators of it, which would traditionally be where the DC-9 got its foothold. Be nice to have a good DC-9 in the sim. There was one in progress a while ago. I don't know of any 111. You got the gin and tonics, awesome stuff. It's Danair as well, so you shouldn't have to pay for that gin and tonic, it should all be part of the service. It's a nice looking livery. They had the same livery on the BAC-7, not the BAC, the Hawker Siddeley 748. It looks good on most things. It's very classical kind of 70s, 80s livery down there. This is the long haul across the North Sea. Whoever got the aircraft carrier A that close to the frigate and B between the two oil fields, that's maybe not a great thing to do. I really need to just turn those off. Just be easier to turn them off. Oh, that's the golden rule, Winston. You just get them to give you one and then carry the other one all sealed up. You don't want to have to climb over twice to go out to the galley. Is there an IXEG livery for it as well? Oh, that's good to know. They operated the classics as well, and the 727. In fact, Danair were, I believe, the launch customers of the 727-200 in the UK. Tracking means, yeah, I've been flying that a little bit. I've got a few projects on at the moment that are taking a bit of time, but yeah, maybe next week we're going to have a look at the Piston Islander now it's been updated. That'd be good to show that off. Colt Dixon, thanks so much for the follow, much appreciated. Hope you're having a good evening. or good afternoon. We're flying the FlyJSim 727 across to Stavanger in Norway, and we're about 200 miles or so until we land. I landed on the frigate Winston using the Gin helicopter. That's the only time the frigate has been any fun whatsoever. I was also really tempted, concerned that we should have idented it by now. Have I tuned it correctly? 1685, 1685. How far away did I say it was? 269. Yeah, we should be there. I'll leave it another little bit. I'll double check. I was thinking about, I've been listening to Intruders, you know, the Jake Grafton series of books by Stephen Kuntz, I think it is. I was listening to that in the car the past few times I've been to work. So I'm looking for an A6 now just to go and fly around from Whidbey Island, also just south of Vancouver. But there doesn't seem to be a good A6 in X-Plane. Maybe it would have to be DCS for that. Well, there we go. The DME has popped to life, and we've got a good indication from the needles as well. The moment of truth is to see whether or not 072 was correct. There's a little bit of a discrepancy showing there, but as we come across here, 072 exactly on the centre line. So we've flown a direct track from one VOR to the other VOR using a slightly different course because of how the great circles work. And you can see on the RMI is indicating that we're slightly, misaligned. We're slightly to the left of the direct track. But that's how the RMI works. The RMI is reading the radial. So it's not necessarily the same as an ADF. If this was an ADF, you'd expect it to be, if we were directly between two ADFs, the lines would be directly aligned because they're referenced to the aircraft, whereas the RMI is referenced to the VOR itself. So we're on the course 068, so the needle will be on the 248 pointer, 248 down there, exactly as it is. Flight of the Intruder, yeah, that's right. Yes. Do you remember the movie as well, Winston? Was it Devil 505 was his call sign? So still tracking outbound from Aberdeen, however, with sensible indications it'd be a good time to swap over. So if I click it for the final time into manual mode, we'll change the VOR number 1, the nav radio, to 1685, which is SOLA. Now reset 072, which is the inbound radial. Check that it does line up. We'll flick it back into forelock mode. Expect a slight tweak on the course, and then all is good. Yeah, it wasn't the best movie. It didn't capture the essence of the books, if you like. But they tried to keep the political stuff from the books out of it a little bit. Headset 60, British Island Airways, yeah, that's right. I don't remember Air Tourism Panorama. Okay, I'll have a look at those. Thanks for joining the chat as well. Hope you're enjoying the stream so far. So, going into SOLA, I'm going to fly this procedure in a bit of a different manner than what's on the chart, because I want to show you how you can kind of make it up as you go along in a flight simulator. We're going to use a real world procedure, but we're not going to fly what's on the chart. So I need to fly a hold entry, which involves flying northbound towards the Zulu Oscar Lima to enter a hold like this, a right hand pattern north on to 359. So I have to fly direct entry. We're coming in from the west. I need to fly overhead the VOR, run for about 15 seconds and then turn right, parallel the track and then turn round, and that should have me lined up. As long as I'm within 30 degrees either side of that outbound leg, all is good. So I'll fly the entry, the reversal and then outbound on the Zulu Oscar Lima. We're going to fly out on that course, the reciprocal of the ILS course here. We're going to go in at 4,000 feet, we'll go fly out at 4,000 feet, we'll descend down to 3,000 feet and we'll intercept at 3,000 feet at around about 10 miles. This is a low level intercept. I want to intercept a little bit higher, a little bit further back, just to have time to look at it. But we'll talk it through as we do it. The idea in showing this is if you don't have the Navigraph charts, we're a bit far out to see it on here, but in your own sim you can have a look. You can put it onto the IFR en route mode. It will show you the VOR, the ILS radial. It will show you any nav age you've got there, and even if you don't have the charts, as long as you're aware of the terrain, you can fly a procedural approach without radar vectoring. It's fairly straightforward. So I'll leave this up on the screen during the procedure so that you can see what we're doing, but it's really just for interest only. We need to set up the speeds as well. So for the landing speeds, we are 46 tons. My VREF speed is going to be 133. I'll keep that in mind. I'll use 2 bugs for that. So if I take 2 bugs and I'll put it at the bottom bug at 133. So that's between 133 and 138. 138 would be my VREF plus 5. I also need to have plus 15 for the missed approach. So that's at 148. Plus 15 there. And 210 is the clean speed. So VREF, VREF plus 5, which is where we're going to fly the approach. VREF plus 15, that's the point that we target for the missed approach. And 210 is the minimum clean. I'll leave the speed target where it is just now. And we'll do a flap 30 landing. It's just a little bit easier in the 737 to land flap 30. We would normally be going down to 4,000 feet, so that's about 28,000 feet to lose. Start the descent about 90 miles out, but this aircraft is a little bit slippier. I think it's partially because it doesn't have the same big fans on the front, so there's less drag to begin with, and I think it might have a slightly higher residual thrust from the smaller engines. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it doesn't quite keep up with a 3-degree idle path. It needs a few extra miles, so we'll give it that as we go. Automod is strange. I like to have Automod turned on just in case there's anything pop up that I don't notice straight away. But it does pick up things that really don't need to be on there. And it lets some stuff through that you think, why is it doing that? It makes no sense. Yes, exactly the same, Winston. It doesn't quite manage a 3-degree idle profile, so it needs just a little bit more space. I think a lot of it, there may be something to do with the minimum thrust setting for pressurization as well. You need a minimum RPM on the engine to enable the pressurization to still happen, enough power to make the bleeds work properly. And I don't know if that's part of the issue with this as well. I'm not familiar with the JT8 at all, other than in the sim. So to descend, we're going to do it the same way as we did the final stages of the climb. I'm going to just set my altitude straight to 4,000 feet. Oh, it's got auto brake as well. Let's set auto brake medium. So 4,000 feet for the platform altitude on the approach. That's 105 miles. That's good enough. I'll flick it into IES hold, and I'll just bring the power off. And as it loses the power, it will lower the nose to try and keep the speed at roughly the target speed there. Yeah, there's not much that comes up on auto mod, really, Vinny. It's odd things. A lot of aircraft procedures, if you write, you know, turbine intermediate temperature in the abbreviated form, it didn't like that one bit. Yeah, well, the 727's got them, but the auto brakes are in the overhead on the 727, which is exactly where you expect to find them. I think it flies quite nicely. If I was to do a full flight test on the aircraft as simulated, I would say the pitch characteristics are not satisfactory for if you were to assess it as a real-world aircraft, the pitch characteristics would not be satisfactory. But for everything you do with it in the sim, it's fine. Yeah, it flies nicely throughout the envelope in the sim. When you get a bit excited with the pitch, it will depart controlled flight very easily, which the 737 should not do. It's a very conventional aircraft, the 737. Up until the MAX, it's only the MAX that has that high alpha excursion characteristic. Does everybody know what causes the issue with the MAX, out of curiosity? Because it's something that the press report very badly on. They don't really clarify exactly what the reason is behind the MCAS. You know, it's about the shifting centre of pressure when the alpha increases. So there's a general principle. As the aircraft slows down, you should have to hold the stick. You have to keep increasing the stick pressure. So if you slow the aircraft down, you have to apply more back pressure. And it's positive, a static longitudinal stability, I believe it's called. And basically it means that the stick forces are always in the correct sense. So as you approach the stall, if you release back pressure, the nose should come down. Okay, and aircraft are supposed to work like that. But as you move the engines forward of the wing, imagine the airflow is coming from here at the moment. If that engine is further forward and the airflow is coming from here, the engine nacelle itself on the MAX was providing lift. So the centre of pressure, the lift, is not going up and down here, it's now going up and down here. So the centre of pressure moves forward quite dramatically as it approaches the stall. The problem with that is the MAX got to the point where you were having to push the stick forward to stop it from stalling. It would self-stall. If you take your hand off the stick, it would continue to slow down, whereas really it should accelerate. If you are not trimmed, you take your hand off the stick, the nose should come down. But the MAX was pitching up, so it had self-stalling tendencies, and as a result of that, that's not allowed. You can't certify that. So the MCAS system is designed to shift the stab trim to make it feel like it's got normal control forces. The problem with it is, obviously, they didn't quite get it right. But the 727 had a similar issue. That's why British 727s had a stick pusher initially. Another aircraft as well. I mean, the 747 had neutral stability at high alpha. So it had a Mach trim system pusher fitted on the earlier ones as well. I think so, Captain Crash. It's the KC-135 has similar issues, but obviously military certification isn't quite the same. Do any of the Omega tankers, any of the Omega 707s have the CFM56s, or are they all JT8s? That might give you a clue. I know the CFM's on the was on the DC-8, the 770 series. So we've got just under 20,000 feet to go. That would be 60 miles, and we've got 71, so it's looking reasonable at the moment. Yeah. The principle, the issue with the MCAS, fundamentally, it's not a problem. From an engineering perspective, designing an aircraft that isn't naturally stable is a poor choice, because you're designing an aircraft that will not be able to be certified in its natural state. It does need some software augmentation. And people compare that to the Airbus, but in actual fact, the Airbus aerodynamically is entirely conventional. The Airbus doesn't need fly-by-wire to fly. If you fitted it with hydraulics, normal hydraulics and actuators, the 320 would fly beautifully. It doesn't need any of the software to make it fly better. The software is there to provide easy and carefree handling. But the MAX cannot fly without that MCAS because it's just not safe. It doesn't respond in the correct manner at high alpha. And having that operated off a single alpha gauge was a surprising decision, shall we say. I'm surprised that they thought that was appropriate. The reason the 737's done so well is because it's a very simple aircraft in the grand scheme of things. You take a simple aircraft and you make it complicated. The results were sadly predictable. Maybe just not to that extent. This one constantly flies with the elevator out of trim. I don't know why that is. I think when the developers, maybe the developers didn't understand exactly how the elevator and stab trim is supposed to work, but it's no big deal. It doesn't affect the handling. It's a visual thing only on this one. We should probably have some anti-ice. Too late. 15,000 feet to go. We'd need 45 miles. I guess, Winston, that it's like everything else, that when you get one group of engineers not talking to another group of engineers, a fringe case is not identified. The thing that I can't understand is why they didn't tell the pilots about MCAS. That would have made a big difference. Vinny, thanks for joining the stream, much appreciated. Have a good day, and speak to you later. Of course, the good thing about the MAX is it should be fairly safe. It should be a very safe aircraft once they've got through all the additional tests with it. And it's of no comfort to the relatives at all. And that's the sad thing about air crashes. There's just, no matter what you do in the future, it doesn't fix it for the people that have lost everything. However, the lesson should be learned. There shouldn't be another scenario occurs in this current generation of engineers where that kind of thing happens again. You know, people knew about static stability, they knew how it was important, and at some point the impact of that failure was lost on the engineers. So hopefully the lesson is well learned now. "12,000 feet to go to the platform." That's 36 miles. We get 47, so comfortably maintaining about 10 miles margin. Coming through 15,000 feet, I'll put the seatbelt signs on and Deirdre can start strapping people in. So I'm going to do all of the arrival, or as much of the arrival as possible, using the autopilot. We've got SOLA tuned up on 116.85. I can now put the ILS on 10.3 as well, so 10.3. 10.3, and the inbound course, again the FO is not doing anything with the nav, so we'll put 179, and I'll have him looking at the ILS straight away. Should just about work out. Deirdre's going to be angry. You had the PA Winston, seatbelts are going on in 10 minutes. If you get any final orders, any requests. $10,000 feet to lose, 30 miles, we've got 40, so still good. So you see the modern airway deviates ever so slightly on the way into Sola, but I'm happy just to straight line it. There's no merit in trying to fly this little kink that wouldn't have been there in the day. Excellent. I'm going to have to get the 727 as well, the modern 727. So does everybody understand what we're going to try and do when we get a little bit closer to Sola? The hold entry, the procedure turn? I'll try and talk about it as we do it. Fundamental differences in Europe, you've got to be aligned with the outbound course. You can't go outbound if you're greater than 30 degrees from the desired track when you get to the holding fix or the beacon fix. Conversely, in the US, you've got a 200 knot speed limit, if I remember correctly, for this sort of thing. You don't have that under the PANSOPS procedures. It's 240 knots for this class of aircraft. So that means I can do it clean in the 737. Minimum clean speed is 210. I'll try and maintain 220 just to give myself some thinking margin. I'll put it into control wheel steering. I'll just lift the nose ever so slightly and we'll help it slow down to 250 knots. You hear it trimming away with control wheel steering as the speed's coming off. So control wheel steering is really just the autopilot holding the pitch. So we can flick it back into IAS hold now and just aim for 250. 10,000 feet, we're going down to 4,000 feet, that's 6 miles, 6,000 feet, sorry, 6, 12, 18 miles required, we've got 24, so we're in good shape. I'll put the lights on as well because there's no drag penalty on the 737, and just double check that we are descending on the cabin properly. All is good. Deirdre is not going to be happy. Oh my goodness, I forgot the galley. I'm sure she'd have told me on the departure of Gatwick. Yes, no, the pitch command doesn't work the same as Show Me Boy. This one is just for the flight directors and nothing else. So it was really useful to have to fly it in VS mode. But the fact they've put control wheel steering in properly is a good substitute. I'm not sure which I like better, to be honest. Flying it on the pitch command was really useful though. I find the 737 a lot easier to manage, not because there's actually much more work involved in the 727, it's just the fact that I know more about the 737. I've got a little bit more time in the sim with it. Oh, you still use the modified checklist as well? Oh, nice. Yeah, this has got the same features. This has got the checklist. It's not in the order that I would have done it, but this one's a little bit better than it used to be. I don't tend to use it anymore. Of course, if I used the checklist, we wouldn't have ended up with the galley switched off for 2 hours, so, you know, it's my fault we didn't have any hot meals on this sector. So just coming up to 3,000 feet to lose, that's about 9 miles, and we've got 14. Again, all is good. What I want to do is start bringing the speed off. So rather than going into control wheel steering, I'll just nudge it off ever so slightly with the IAS hold. If I make little changes, we should be able to get the speed back comfortably. I'm going to do something fairly naughty as well. We're going to hold to the southeast of Sola here, so my inbound is going to be 359. Because I'm doing it single pilot, I'm going to set 179, which is the same as the final approach track course, so the VOR indications will be essentially reversed. I'm only flying it on the heading bug, so it won't cause any real issues, but just in case you wonder why I'm doing it differently, I should really have 359 set up here and tell the FO to change it for me, but it's easier just to fly it slightly back to front. There's 10 miles to go. Check that the heading bug is aligned correctly. Go into manual steering, heading select, and then I'll put 179. I literally said it 3 seconds ago. There's 179. So I'm going to fly overhead the beacon, 15 seconds, turn right, fly for a minute, turn right, and then intercept back in towards the VOR. You can see it still on the pointer here as well. Now, one of the great things about being in IAS hold is that I can bring the power up and reduce my rate of descent. So I don't need to level off and then put a load of power on. I can do it smoothly just by increasing the power until the rate of descent backs off, if that makes any sense. Come back to about 220 now. So 4,000 feet or so, as long as we're 4,000 feet for going outbound, it's fine. What I really want is to have the speed back. So 4 miles until the overhead, or just about, with 1,000 feet to lose. Should work out. And I'm in heading steering. I highly recommend that you use shortcuts for the heading pointer. I use the delete and the page down on the so the magic 6 keys they call it these days. So I've got the trim on the magic 6 and the autopilot on the control with the magic 6 buttons just above the cursors. So looking for the VOR to pass overhead, going to count for 15 seconds and then turn right onto 179. I'll bring that up, and this is really just for your reference, so if I put that there so it's not kind of in the way. So the VOR is going down the right hand side of the aircraft. It's flipped over, so 15 seconds starting the clock. Bring some power on as well to maintain 230 knots. Maybe about 1.2. There's 15 seconds, turn on the pointer. Yeah, that's fine. Within 10 miles, I didn't honestly check, to be honest. This is about doing it the cheaty FlyJSim way, Pilsner. It'll be fine. So you can see as we're coming round, when the arrow here passes 270, we are already downwind of the beacon. Upwind of the beacon. We're already beyond the beacon, if you like. So I want to fly for another minute, in this track here, and then we'll turn around and capture the VOR inbound. You see 1.2 here gives us 220 knots level, kind of roughly where I want to be. And because I'm not using airspeed hold mode now, I can use this dead time to reset my VREF +5, so I'll put that in there. Flying a hold manually is really fairly straightforward once you know the mechanics of it. I've got 20 seconds to go. If I get to 30 degrees, see this is tail of the needle, is almost the gate they call it. If I get to 150, that's the 30-degree line, before the time elapses, I would turn and fly outbound on the gate they call it. But in this case, that's the minute, that's fine. So I'll turn around and we should intercept. So I'm a little bit wider than the gate, that's as expected on that sort of direct entry. Looking at my mouse cursor just now, the gate is a 30-degree line coming down this way. Okay, so if I hit the gate first, I'm too close in. I haven't offset far enough from the VOR. So much easier with no wind. There's ways to sort it out with wind as well. I'll maybe have a look at that in a video at some point. My feeling is not many people really care about doing procedures manually. So remember, we only have to be within 30 degrees. This is a hold entry. There's no prizes for getting it spot on. We just want it to be functional. So if we're one side of the line or the other, it's not the end of the world. Flaps and tip left. Yeah, absolutely. You see, it bleeds a little bit of energy off as we turn. So just a couple of extra points on the EPR there. So yeah, it's just going to be inside a little bit. So I'll just adjust the heading pointer and correct that. But you know, we are well within 30 degrees. I'm really looking for the needle to be between 33 and 030. Pretty close. And I'm simply going to hold it at 4,000 feet until we track outbound. We could descend down to 3,000 feet straight away once we're over the beacon, but I'm keeping it straightforward. We're trying to do it simple as possible for flight sim fun. It's fun on an NDB because you can't trust the needles when you're in the turn, Winston, as you know. That adds a little bit of fun to it. But you just have to level the wings, take a reading, and make an adjustment. The VOR and an RMI, it makes you lazy. See, we're so close in, 1 mile to go. You know, that's close enough. And hopefully we'll fly outbound on the 179. Put an in-op sticker over the NDB. Yeah, Winston, just tell them that you were told it was performance-based navigation these days and NDBs are so last year, and you'll be good. So passing overhead the beacon. Remember, I want to intercept the ILS after the turn's complete at around about 9 miles. So I'm going to take it outbound to about 7 miles. Important to remember at this point that this needle here is coming from the VOR and that needle there should be coming from the ILS. So because it's more or less the same thing and the ILS is more relevant, I'll make the switch just now. And we'll basically back course ourselves out on the localizer. And this is exactly what you do if you're flying into Innsbruck as well. You know, you use localizer when you're flying one of the circling procedures, in fact. So I've got the lights on. I'll put the continuous ignition on because I'm about to select the flaps. Pressurization's working. All good. Don't worry about it, Showman Boy. They're interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. NDBs and ADFs, it's the same thing. You notice the 737, it corrects on the HSI here, so it's giving me, that's technically a fly right indication because, you know, I'm flying it back to front. It's reading correctly on here. Interesting how that works. And I think that's correct. I know there's a difference between how the Airbus and the 737 does it. But I haven't seen enough of the Airbus recently to remember, if I'm being quite honest. So when we get to the required distance, just about 7 miles, I'm going to make a 45-degree turn and then time 45 seconds outbound. I'll start down to 3,000 feet as well. There's 7 miles. So we'll turn. I'll set 3,000. I'll take the first stage of flaps, so the speed can come down to 190. And I'll simply take it out of altitude hold, put it into control wheel steering, and lower the nose. I'm looking for 45 seconds from this point here, so around about 15-20 seconds past should do it, but I need the power off. Come on, little aircraft. That might be a flap exceedance by 5 knots. I don't want to check. Yeah, we're okay. We're good. 1 knot. Excellent. That's what I said. It's a bit pitchy on control wheel steering. That's the only thing. Right, there we go. 45 seconds. Turn around. Yeah, it's 45 180 procedure. Exactly, Pilsner. Right, I shall try and pay attention. I'll take that off now because you've kind of seen what we're doing with it. So flaps 1, minimum speed is 190. I'll take flaps 5, and that's minimum speed 180. Putting a bit of power to hold it there. So we're 13 miles out at 3,000 feet. That's a nice place to be. We could have turned a lot earlier, and we'd still be fine. But this is something for you to practice yourself. Once you've understood it, you can make it a little bit tighter, a little bit faster, a little bit higher. I mean, we could have entered overhead Zola. We could have been at 10,000 feet, and it would still have worked. But I think as you're learning it, if you break it down, it kind of works. I'll put it into auto approach for the flight directors, and it should turn inbound. So now we've got the flight directors back and ready to go. It's still an alt hold at the moment, but it'll give us the approach guidance. Radios are both tuned the same, and we've got an airfield ahead of us. Life is good. So while we've got a minute or two just to look at it, that's exactly what we've done there. You've got the reversal to align us with the track. We've gone outbound. We've swapped over to fly outbound on the ILS, if you like. 45-degree turn, 45 seconds, 180 turn, and then turn inbound. You can do that. Some places you're not allowed to do it, but in the simulator, it's a very effective way of doing it. So picking up the glide slope, bring the power to idle, and 3,000 will do for the missed approach altitude today as well. It's looking good. It's much easier aiming when there's no wind, and I always, I'm trying to show how things are supposed to work in the real world. If there was wind on here, it would be scrappy. It would be really all over the place, just like everything else. But, it is what it is. 2,500 feet, I'm going to do gear down, flaps 15, minimum speed now is 150 knots. When the gear's down, I can arm the speed brakes. It's a click spot on this aircraft. In reality, you just lift the lever up over the ledge. We'll just keep slowing down, so within 10 knots of that 150, we'll take flaps 25, minimum speed's 140. And within 10 knots of 140, flaps 30, target speed is VREF 137, and that's going to be about 1.3 on the EPR. Actually, maybe it's about 1.4 on the EPR, I can't remember now. Yeah, it's about 1.4. 1.3 is something else. Cool, so we've got gear down, 3 greens, we've got speed brake armed, we've got flaps in the landing condition, we've got the lights, the belts, the ignition, and we should be good. Yeah, 1.4 EPR on the approach. I think 1.3 is the 15 speed. Am I likely to enter IMC Pilsner? Yeah. Maybe when I get a new computer. So I'm at VREF just now, maybe just a touch on the slow side. It's still safe at 132, but I want to carry a little bit more energy. There we go, 1,000 feet. We are stable and visual. Take the autopilot out. So the flight directors are still providing guidance. So autopilot disconnect. I don't think that should flash like that, but that's fine. Maybe it does. So you can see with an aircraft without auto thrust, it really helps to learn the power datums. That way you can just set the power where it needs to be and not have to worry about it overlay. I'll stop reading the chat. There's something about Ryanair and landing gear that I was intrigued by, but I'll try and fly the landing first of all.
500.
So remember, smooth reduction on the power, coupled by looking at the far end of the runway. Just correcting that picture back to where we need to be. You can see it's a bit sloppy in pitch, which is not really quite how I think it should be. But you know, it's still completely flyable.
100.
Looking at the far end, checking the sync rate.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Speed brakes out, reversers. Excellent. Big buckets on the 737 Classic. Yeah, you just sometimes you just got to fly through it, Pilsner. It's a bit exciting. Right, auto brake's coming off. I'll store the not the spoilers. I'll store the reversers, and we'll just roll to the end. Now this is where I always get lost in Stavanger. It should really just be a right turn and then cross the runway. Does anybody want to see that on replay before I clean up the aircraft? Or are you happy to take it as it was? Right, off we go. Nice and slow. Put the spoilers away. Bring the flaps up. Lights can go off, off, on, on. Let's get the continuous ignition off. Strobes off. APU on. Replay please. Let's have a go at that. I'll pause it for a second. Toggle replay. I've not tried the replay much on the 737. Let's see how it works. Oh, too far out. So most airlines will work to be stable by 1,000 feet, which means gear flaps and roughly on speed by 1,000 feet above the airfield. 4 miles is fairly normal with Ryanair and every other major carrier. You can do 160 knots to just over 4 miles quite comfortably. Putting the gear down miles back at a busy airfield, you're not going to make any friends doing it. It seems to handle the replay okay. It's still got flaps. Right, here we go. Into play mode. Can I get rid of this? It's a nice looking jet. I think I flared a touch high. I did a 321 flare, so I kind of had to just drive it down there. Oh, there we go. Where were we? I'm never too sure about these so there's the pappies there. Yeah, just between the fixed distance and the fuss markers. That's fair enough, I'm quite happy with that. Of course, when you get nil wind and no turbot, it is quite straightforward, really. I do love the big reversers on the 200 here, though. Nice. Right, let's come off the replay then, and I'll take it off pause. We should be going basically straight ahead here, across the runway, and then we'll find somewhere to park. There's probably some stuff I haven't done, including this here, so I need to go to ground mode. I'll switch one of the packs off. Is my APU starting? It should be. Has the replay screwed that up? Come on APU, you got it. So lights, strobes. Yep. Oh, weather radar. That's the one. Not that it matters much in a flight simulator. And the transponder can go back to alt mode. Awesome. So yeah, I really quite enjoy flying this 737. I enjoyed flying the 727 as well. It's difficult to compare it with the IXEG because I adore the IXEG. Why are my flaps not up? I adore the IXEG. But you can have lots of fun with this as well. I would say that the IXEG probably presents slightly better value for money. Just put the strobes on for the runway crossing. Tempered with the fact that the IXEG is still pending some updates, whereas this is essentially a finished product. And the little issues this has are only visual issues. The slip ball, nobody cares, really. And the flaps and slats, it might be an issue if that sort of thing annoys you. But it flies nicely, and the radio stuff works correctly. Can I go in this way, Pilsner? Papa? Oh, we'll take this one. I'll just find a parking stand. So next week, if the opportunity presents itself, we can have a look at the Islander, the piston Islander. I don't know what to do with it. I'd love your suggestions, because we're kind of on the Turbo Islander. We did a kind of Scottish tour, and I do like flying the Islander around Scotland. But stand 13 looks good enough to me. That's something I haven't done. That's it. But I don't want to get too samey. So if you want to go Islander flying, tell me where you want to fly. Somewhere that we can get 3 or 4 landings in the space of a couple of hours would be really useful. Put it on the centre line. Right, that'll do. I'll hold it on the brakes, and then I'm going to check that my parking brake is set. 737s, my nemesis, the parking brake is set. Having set the parking brake, the probe heat could have gone off as well. We're going to put the generators on. No, I'm going to put the APU on to generator 1 and 2. I have the. Do I need to put the bleeds off? I don't think I need to put the bleeds off. Nope, don't need to put the bleeds off. So generators are done. Shut down. Have the elect pumps off. We've got 1 APU running, so I'll switch 3 of the pumps off. And we're depressurizing. That's fine. That's fine. Window heat can stay on for the turnaround. Are we spilling down? Yes. Alright. We'll put the beacon lights off. Seat belts off. And transponder. We'll set it to IFR conspicuity. 2000. Stand by. Let's have a look outside. is there space to get the jetty? Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at these steps on the back. It's here somewhere. This one. Air stairs. We could open the entry door, we'll just not use the air stairs. Exponent Mage 40, thanks very much for the feedback. Really nice to hear it. I've been doing some streaming just because it's a little bit easier than doing a full series on YouTube, but there will be some YouTube stuff coming up as well. Hopefully the SAB 340 is near to a stable version. Once we get a stable version of the SAB, we'll have a look at that and do some tutorials on YouTube in the more traditional sense. But I hope you're enjoying the streams as well. The great thing about the stream is it gives us a chance to do a full flight, which is a bit, it'd be a bit boring to do that on YouTube. Folks, I'm going to wrap the stream up there. It's just coming up to 2 hours and 45 minutes. Before we shut the stream down, do you have any questions on the 737 if you're thinking about purchasing it, or if you're curious about it, or indeed anything else you've seen on streams over the past few weeks? Go ahead, now's your chance. As I said, suggestions. I like the Caribbean idea. I need to have a think about where we would do that. Shetlands or Orkney. Actually, Orkney might be good fun. We could fly a schedule in the Orkneys. But yeah, keep your ideas coming. There's also Connemara on the west coast of Ireland, where they've got 3 islands there. At the moment, just X-Plane. My computer's old enough that really X-Plane is the only viable option for me at the moment. Microsoft FlyJSim. I'd love to try it out. I just don't have a machine that runs it at the moment, and there's so much exciting stuff coming up for X-Plane as well. But I'm going to stick with X-Plane for a little bit. I can't wait to see how the CJ4 turns out on Microsoft FlyJSim, because it looks very good as well. Folks, thanks for joining the stream. Much appreciated, as always, for you spending your Friday evening with me. I hope you'll tune in again soon. You take care over the weekend. Have a good weekend. And as I said, as I always say, keep your fingers crossed that we're over the hill on this pandemic and things get better rather than worse from now on. Take care, stay safe, and I'll speak to you again later. Thanks very much.